What's up, lore masters? Today will be an exploration of a theory that has historically been postulated, but to my understanding hasn't really been explored. Interestingly, while researching this theory, I've heard some very intriguing extra theories about the Borg and the Q that we may delve into at a later point. But for now, let's focus on the one I find the most intriguing. Did the Q utilize humanity to fight a proxy war with the Borg? Let's just get into it. The first thing we have to come to an agreement on is the limitations of the Q. Now, this will need to be done for the sake of argument. Should you not agree with it, then we don't really have much to talk on, so you can comment about how I'm wrong about it, but beyond that, this video is going to be a waste for you. First, we have to agree that for the purposes of this theory, the Q are, at best, a lowercase g god, which means that they aren't all-powerful and have limitations. We can't be sure if their powers are due to an evolutionary trait or technology, but at the moment, we do know that most species don't have the ability to contend with the Q. That said, the Q are fallible, and it is possible, with sufficient technology or natural ability, to fight the Q. If this is the case, a species that was seeking perfection would ultimately set their sights on a superior race like the Q when they have reached the substantial level to defeat them. And we do actually have some of the loosest evidence that supports this. The first would be the face-off between Guinan and Q that we see in Q Who. We know in this episode that Guinan and Q have had some issues, and the body language and dialogue of that episode suggests that Guinan may even have the ability to fight Q. When watching it, you notice that she brings up her hands in a defensive posture, and Q even describes her as something else, as an imp. Guinan does seem to consider Q a threat, true, but isn't scared of him. Likewise, as I've kind of discussed, Q seems to consider Guinan a threat, so much that he wants to extinguish her. And even consider this, when you look at how he treats every other species on the Enterprise, it's almost with an amused ambivalence, but not Guinan. Guinan he takes very, very seriously. We also know that Guinan can sense changes in the timeline, that her species is much more powerful than she ever lets on. And then Guinan's race was assimilated by the Borg. So now we have a species that arguably the Q fear that can also sense time. And they're all Borg. Huh. We also know that the Q don't go out of their way to antagonize the Borg, the well-known line of the Continuum teaching the younger Q not to provoke the Borg and all that. So there is a species that the Q fear that the Borg have now assimilated. The Q continue to caution about provoking other Q from attacking or antagonizing the Borg. And the Borg want to become perfect, which means they will ultimately want to assimilate the Q at one point. So taking this all into account, the fact that a civilization has been assimilated that can fight the Q, that the Q don't want to directly confront the Borg, what do? They look for an entity that would be able to match the Borg, given enough preparation time. In Star Trek, we know a constant theme is the ingenuity of the Federation and the reverence of Starfleet engineers. Engineers are able to take rocks and make them microwaves after all. So what if the Q decided to utilize humanity to fight and defeat the Borg? Of course, you can't just tell the government you're going to use them in some kind of proxy war or that you're going to use them as a puppet. So you send an agent to rile them up, force them to meet the adversary you want them to defeat, and then let evolution take its course. We know that all future eventualities, the Borg are either severely crippled or eradicated. This would be largely due to Starfleet intervention, so it really all fits. Perhaps the Borg were getting too close for comfort after what occurred to Guinan's species. And for some reason, again, the Q felt that they couldn't directly confront the Borg. Perhaps with the Borg's new ability to fight the Q, they felt that it's possible they would be assimilated, and so they used other species to defeat the Borg. Basically using chess pieces on a board. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know that I subscribe to this theory. There's actually other possibilities that make more sense that involve Q, humanity, and the Borg, but as I stated, that's a video for another time. What are your guys' thoughts? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, guys, ultimately we're all just stories in the end. Make yours a good one.